cool. I like to just keep them kind of short, fun, casual. Pick your evil genius brain that you got.
The way to do it. Yeah, see, look, I'm wearing my Roots garb today, too,
I
the
know.
Canadian stuff.
This,
This show is sponsored by Roots, this
yeah,
episode.
absolutely. Are you on Atlantic time, by the way, or are you
Yeah,
Eastern? Okay.
Atlantic, an
Like
hour.
the natural born coaches, you're repping your own brand in your own house. That's
Oh,
a
yeah, I know.
okay.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the best $40 I've spent. It was about $40 to get it laminated at the print shop and stuff. But every interview and stuff. Now it's a little bit of a glare because it's laminated. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's been great. I tell everyone they should get something like that right behind them, and it's free advertising.
that's genius. I'm going to steal that and probably give
Cool.
you only 50% of the credit at most.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know you, I'm going to give you at least my assessment of you, which is, firstly, I think you're like a genius and a really good, heartfelt dude. And one of the things that really like made me like you so much is you're just personable and caring. Like I feel like a lot of the stuff in this coaching niche is very fly-by-night tactics, here today, gone tomorrow. And you are the opposite of that. You are somebody who's all about the principles. You've been doing this a while. You ain't going anywhere in the next 5 years, at least foreseeable. And have really kind of a different outlook, and lots of people love you and follow you. So firstly, welcome and thank you for being here, my Canadian brother.
Yeah. And just to be fair and balanced, a lot of people don't like me, so I know that.
Yeah,
but that's yeah. If you're out there doing stuff, you're going to get detractors and hopefully fans as well. And at the end of the day, that's cool.
You know, it's really interesting. When I did a lot of stuff in the lawyer niche, there was one lawyer that I connected right away with, John Morgan, who's like the really, really big lawyer in the United States. And whenever I would go to conference, 100% of the other lawyers in the same niche as him hated him and saw him as a competitor.
Yeah.
And I realized the more successful you are, you have like 100% hater saturation rate. So it's probably a good sign.
Well, that's what happened. I had years in real estate before coaching, so I had about a decade in real estate, did really well, and then everything collapsed. And that whole experience proved there's a saying, at least in my neck of the woods, where they say people love to dance on their neighbors' graves. You wouldn't believe the people crawling out of the woodwork to kick me once the business closed. Oh. That we're probably looking at 10 years and who's this kid, thinks his crap doesn't stink and all this stuff. So end up working out well because I wouldn't be talking with you here today had I still been in real estate. But yeah, people, it's the old crabs in a bucket, tall poppy syndrome. You hear that as well in society. People hate successful people. It's just law of nature.
Yeah, one of the things that actually I really love about you is that you always take the time to answer your messages, and I assume I'm not the only one you're doing that for. It hasn't gone to your head in any way that at least I can see. Like, curious to know, like one of the things that we kind of talked about before is you've seen a lot of stuff come and go. Like, what do you feel are some of kind of like the biggest kind of bullshit things that are going around that everybody's saying you got to do that are kind of total nonsense?
Oh, geez. How much time? You said we only have 20 minutes. Do we have like 5 or 6 hours? Oh, geez. It's trying to narrow it down. I mean, from my stuff, I'm not big on the earn 7 figures in a month, working 5 minutes a day type thing. So I'm not really a 4-hour work week guy. Not saying that it's not possible as you get rolling with your business and you can scale up and you get help or so on, but there's too many people selling that to the people that are just out of the gate in day one. And I don't know about you, but I found same thing back in my past life with real estate, but also coaching. The first 6 months to a year was just grind and not being compensated for it, but I knew I was priming the pump that it was going to show in results in future years. So I would have to say that would be the biggest thing. I'm not a fan of manifestation type stuff. Like you sit at home and shoot out positive vibrations out of your behind and everything will be attracted to you. Yeah. And there are a lot of manifestation coaches out there and stuff, and that's just not my thing. I don't like it. Don't get me wrong. Positive thinking is important. Don't be grumpy and be negative and all that other stuff. But I think overall you're better off going in being realistic, right? And thinking, hey, this is going to take a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely 1,000% agree with you. I think a lot of them kind of like certainly misrepresent it. And there's a part of people I think that probably should know better, but they just want that fast, easy buck, and the promise of it is always going to get new people. So when people kind of go through your thing, like what I like is that you're really kind of more principle based. Like what are some of the principles do you think that are kind of the things in coaching that never change, which I think are the really important things?
Well, I mean, if you're in coaching, you have to like people. I mean, that should be common sense. And unfortunately, I find that there's a lot of people getting into coaching that right away, once it gets started, they don't want to actually have to talk to anybody. They want to be making money while they sleep. And there's a saying that you have to be able to make money while you're awake before you can make money while you sleep. So when I started out in early 2014, I started out with one-on-one coaching and added a group program to it. I didn't have my online programs, my print newsletter subscription, and the other stuff till a few years down the road, which I think was probably good because it gave me that base where I actually worked with people, and it probably made my programs, my subscription service, everything else better because I had that experience. But I see a lot of people that just don't really have interest in coaching per se. They just want to hear the notifications come in, the bleeps and blings on their banking app that money came in.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's cool. I love it when that's happening with my hands-off stuff, but I'll always have a component of direct coaching somewhere with people because I like keeping my finger on the pulse and knowing what's going on out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to actually not just like people like you mentioned, what you kind of hinted at as well is like, you got to actually like bettering their lives. Like if you're trying to do this as a hands-off income generation, there's only about 1,000 better things to do that. But I think it's really rewarding. Be curious to know. I mean, obviously you've worked with a lot of people and you've had a lot of success stories over the years. I've personally know quite a few people who are singing your praises, which is a compliment to you and all you do. What are some of the things you see in common when people really do well in this industry that you think, helps them succeed instead of, being one of the statistics?
Yeah, so I work solely with coaches. So anyone approaches me with a bricks and mortar type business, if it's Joe's Widgets or whatever, I refer them off to a coach I know that can help them. So I'm only working with coaches, but the ones that do best with me, first of all, aren't perfectionists, or they beat the perfectionist streak out of them. It's not a business if you're a perfectionist. If it's going to take you 6 months to craft a simple lead magnet, which should take a couple hours, you're going to get steamrolled. So they're not perfectionists. They're not afraid to get out there. And with my whole business, it's all helping people get clients without paid advertising. So it's very important, content creation, getting your message out there, doing things like this, doing podcasts and all the other stuff. If you're afraid to get out there and if something's holding you back, you're just not going to get the results that you want. So part of what I do is push people into the deep end, which some people say, oh, that's not, coaches shouldn't do that, because they're not going to get results if they're not willing to get out there. You know how noisy the online space is, and it's changed a lot even since early 2014 when I started. 2014 compared to 2018, it's way noisier even now. I thought it was noisy back then. Now it's crazy.
Mark, I think my internet, I'm in Spain right now, and I think I'm getting island Wi-Fi syndrome right now. Can you still hear me? I've been traveling the world, and I'm in Spain right now, and the island Wi-Fi just is island Wi-Fi.
No worries. That's okay.
Should have warned you about that the technology may not 100% cooperate.
That's okay. I was probably talking to myself for a couple minutes, so
I
just saw you. I thought you were being really still. I'm like, wow, he's very stoic, because it was very still, but it was frozen. So.
Well, I was deeply taking in your wisdom, just an
Yeah. So where were we?
Well, before I started swearing at the Wi-Fi, where were we? That was a good question. I do remember we were talking about things that have produced results for people.
Yeah. Just getting out there, being consistent in a nutshell. So consistency isn't always a really sexy thing, right? Because it can be boring day in, day out. But that's a thing I see for coaches that do the best. And that's what I say is one of my superpowers is consistency. I'm just able to just go in and do the consistently do something like commit to it. So with my podcast, the first 300 episodes for Natural Born Coaches was daily show. Now it's a weekly show, but now for the last 2 years, I've been doing daily emails and then consistently showing up on Facebook and everywhere else. I have a daily Alexa flash briefing and all this stuff. Most people don't have that patience. They'll do something for a week, it doesn't work, and then they move on to the next bright, shiny object. Yeah. And that's why they're not getting the traction that they want.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you realize, it took me a long time to realize that on the internet, everybody wants to make the quick buck, but you forget that there's real people on the other side. And you have to establish relationship and connection and trust. And if you try and skip that step all the time, you're always going to be starting at ground zero. That's a really big one. Sorry,
I just got a new client last week, and she told me she's been following my stuff for 3 years. I didn't really know of her. The name looked a little familiar because she's on my email list and we've been connected on Facebook, but we've never actually spoken like this. And she's like, I've been following your stuff for a couple of years now with it. So stuff that you're doing today could be clients in 2020. And it's hard for people to look that far ahead because they've got bills to pay now and they want to get the money and the revenue coming in right away. But you have to remember all the work you're putting in now, you're priming the pump for something down the road.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, funny story on that in the legal niche, the top guy I know who he was telling me just privately that every time he speaks, he averages $440,000 in sales. So he's pretty good at what he does. But he said he's been doing it a long, long time. And he said there's somebody who is on his newsletter for 18 years. It's a like old school print newsletter, but they almost followed him for 2 decades before they gave him a client. So I think that is the ultimate example of consistency. So I got $1 million question because I literally do not know a human being who shows up on social media more consistently than you. You are like multiple times a day, not just once or twice. How do you do it? How do you not run out of ideas? How do you just keep the evil genius brain of yours going like that?
It's going to sound cliche and people may roll their eyes, but when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. So one thing I do, you see my little, I've got moleskin journals all over the place and stuff. If an idea hits my brain, I write it down so I don't lose it. I do a lot of batching. So anyone who doesn't know, batching is when you take a block of time. Let's say, for example, you say every Friday morning from 9 a.m. till noon, I'm going to write my emails for the next week or my Facebook posts or whatever. I do a lot of that, which allows me to get on a roll. So this past weekend, I recorded a month's worth of Alexa flash briefings. They're all 1 minute long. I was just bang, 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 just finished through them. There's a month done just by being focused for a couple hours. So if you're scatterbrained, you have to kind of get your focus working here and to get disciplined and do blocks of time. Also close off your Facebook and stuff. So it looks like I'm on Facebook a lot because I'm posting so often. A lot of times I say drive-by postings. I post something and I get the heck out of there. And then I check back in an hour, 2 hours, whatever, just to answer people all at once. But I try not to get sucked into the Facebook vortex because, as you know, it can be an addictive thing. It's a rabbit hole.
It is an endless rabbit hole of distraction. I once heard somebody describe email as an organized list of everybody else's agenda for you. And I think Facebook is even worse for that than email.
Yeah. Well, here's what puts it into perspective. A few weeks ago, I said, I'm going to cook myself a pizza. So I've been doing good with the gym and stuff. I said, screw it, I'm going to cook a pizza. And I preheated the oven, put the pizza in, and I set the timer for 23 minutes, I think it was. And I said, I'll go in on the couch, open up the laptop, see what's going on Facebook. Well, what seemed to be just a few minutes later, the oven dinged, saying the time's up. And I'm like, there's no way it hasn't been 23 minutes. What's going on? I go out and sure enough, it was 23 minutes. So it felt like 5 to 10 minutes tops once you get onto Facebook doing this. But I always remember that pizza example because I'm like, that's missing time. You ever hear stories where people say they've been abducted by aliens? And
you're abducted by content.
So there's missing time where they get abducted by aliens and they wake up, naked by a convenience store 3 days later and they don't know where the time went. That's kind of what Facebook can be like to a certain extent. And I realized that when I was cooking my pizza. So I am very careful with Facebook. It's a great revenue generator for me, but I know that it can be a huge time suck as well if I'm not careful.
Yeah, it's really genius that you use it so intentionally. It's funny because every time I talk to somebody who's kind of in this world and doing it well, like I recently was talking to a guy who's got a 1 million-person YouTube channel and they make a new video every day, and I was like,
Oh, wow.
how in the hell do you make a new video every day? And he says, we don't. We shoot like 4 hours on Sunday, 35 videos in a row, and then we just drip feed them over the next month. And interestingly enough is I think, I always find that people who do that, they still use pen and paper. So like, can we take a look into the evil genius brain of yours? Because I think your best ideas are written there.
Yeah, I can show you. This is my really high-tech content creation calendar, if you see here.
Yeah.
Got it from Staples, Canadian version of Kinko's. But you can see here, for some reason, I like having the calendar right in front of me instead. I could have it on my laptop, of course, but seeing it right down there. And then on the back of the calendar, I'm writing down content ideas. Yeah. Here's my plan to take over the world. But I know what I'm going to be promoting. I only focus on one thing at a time. So, for example, the last week of every month, I pushed my print newsletter really heavily because it's going to print the last day of the month. Midnight's a deadline. So I'm just hammering that hard. And then the first week or two of the month, I'm doing something else. Maybe it's doing a joint venture, or it's promoting my group coaching program or what. Yeah, but whatever. I'm cool. Keep it candid, keep it real.
That's the way we like it. Shiny laminated, $40. Building your brand every time you do this. Actually, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you is you are an interview machine. Like on steroids, the amount of interviews you do, like how do you manage your calendar with all that?
Well, I'm on both sides of the mic. My show is pretty easy now. It's a weekly show for natural born coaches. Yeah. In the old days when it was daily, I would block off my Tuesdays and batch interview recordings for my show. And I'd do upwards of 12 or 13 every Tuesday, back to back to back. It was just crazy. But I always wanted to stay ahead because, of course, you need 7 for the week. So I knew if I book 12, maybe I get 10 or 11 done because someone has to reschedule or whatever. I'll stay ahead of the curve. So that part's easy now because I'm actually recorded all the way up till September or October for natural born coaches now. I'm not doing any interviews over the summer. I'll be doing more interviews like this, but I enjoy doing these. For me to show up, I'm not doing any, not having my team edit it or upload it or anything. You're doing all that fun stuff. So I like doing these type of interviews. It's fun. And it lets me open up a little more. I actually prefer, to be honest, to be on this side of the mic as opposed to interviewing. Nothing wrong with interviewing, but I do prefer being interviewed as opposed to interviewing.
Yeah, you get to show off all that charisma and that fancy beard of yours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, fear the beard. I don't know. Maybe I like the sound of my own voice too much, but it's not to knock. I enjoy my show. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I prefer. I can open up a little bit more in this format because as opposed to the other way.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely you've got one of those, like, I mentioned, like, one of the things that I really like about you is some people, when they start doing well in this world, they stop doing the things that got them there, and they stop, like I've seen companies that they engage with all their followers individually, then they get a couple 100,000 and they got no time for it anymore, right? And the things that got them can kind of fall by the wayside. Curious to know, like, you obviously, this is a real passion for you. Like, you really enjoy coaching people. Like, what gets you excited and out of bed to want to do this each day? Because the content and the technical parts are always work. But you obviously push through those to do the meaningful transformation work with real people.
I'm glad you mentioned about other people who they hit a certain pinnacle and then they rest on their laurels and they find themselves being passed over. So I won't mention any names, but there's an author who wrote a book that was pretty big, or fairly big, probably 2005, 2006-ish. And I've read the book and all this stuff, and I assumed he had a heck of a head start because that book was pretty well known. Nowadays, if you look at his presence online and then from talking to people who know him and what he's doing, he's not doing a lot. Yeah. And I thought, wow, if somebody had a head start 2005, 2006 with this big book that did really well, by 2018, you should be way far ahead. I suspect what happened is he didn't get onto the social media train or emailing and stuff like that. He was more old school. Back in the old days, we're talking like 2005, 2006 was a long time ago. But people get passed over, and there's a lot of one-hit wonders out there. They have one successful launch, and they think that, oh, okay, I'm all set. I can just go on this, and it doesn't work that way. I think it helps where I went through business closure in real estate, because it means that I'm have a healthy degree of being paranoid and not relaxing, because I have gone through business closure, bankruptcy, sleepless nights, everything else. So now there is a little bit of paranoia there that I'm like, no, I'm going to keep pushing hard. And that's probably a bad thing in some ways, because I can be prone to workaholism. But overall, I'd rather be like that than the fellow I just mentioned to you that just coasted along and now he's gone with it. So what gets me out of bed in the mornings? I mean, this is something that not a lot of people in the coaching world will admit, but I enjoy making money. I love money, and everyone's like, "Oh no, I don't care about money." You know,
right.
I'm doing it, you know, to change the world. And it's almost like they're afraid that they want to make money. I'm like, hey, this is win-win. I can help a lot of people. I'm helping them make more money and stuff, and I'm making money as well. But I always say that my goal is to be the Sam Phillips of the coaching world. And do you know who Sam Phillips is?
No.
Not a lot of people do. Sam Phillips owned a recording studio in the South in Memphis back in the 50s. And he had this weird teenager came in to record a song for his mother. And the kid had a weird haircut. He had acne. He had a weird name, Elvis. And he gave this kid a chance. And then look what happened. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. So I say I want to be the Sam Phillips of the coaching world. I can find people who could do very well in coaching. They just need some help getting rolling. And then every person I help they could help hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. They could be the next Tony Robbins down the road. I don't know. But for me, that's really exciting. It's a really big ripple effect there for people that I'm dealing with today, what they could become. So, yeah, I want to be the Sam Phillips of the coaching world, find people who could do very well at this. There's a lot of people who would be great coaches if they only had the clients and the business coming in. They're not very good right now getting the clients coming in, and that's what I'm helping with.
Perfect. Well, I think I stole all your time between Wi-Fi and wisecracking. Thank you so much for doing this. Obviously, you're somebody I really admired in this industry, so it's really nice to be able to talk to you. And
well, thanks for being in the Facebook group, and congrats on everything you're doing as well.
I appreciate it. Just in case, we have somebody who stumbles onto this who doesn't know you already, how can they find out more?
Best place is naturalborncoaches.com. That's the main website, or thatcoachingjungle.com. We'll forward them to the Facebook group, and always looking for good coaches in there. So thatcoachingjungle.com.
Perfect. I'm in there, and I can tell you it's an awesome group. So thank you again for putting that together. And I hope your next interview is slightly worse than this one, but fun.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thanks, Frankie. I had fun.
Yeah, likewise. Take care, brother.
Okay. Have a good one.